11 years ago, I think last week, CBS announced my computers as a CBS News investigative correspondent had been breached in an unauthorized way. They had gotten into the whole CBS system. The forensics showed that the government IP addresses that were uninvited in my computer spying on me for a long period of time had a keystroke monitoring program, activated Skype to listen in on conversations when it doesn't look like Skype is even on, had accessed my Fast and Furious files where I was covering a scandal the government was very sensitive to, um, had just done many things to me in the CBS system and that of my family. I thought it would be easy. I never suspected this, by the way, because this is before we knew they'd been doing this to journalists. It was on the front edge of all that. I got tipped off by two people in the intelligence communities, and then someone offered to look at my computer. I never even heard of such a thing that they'd be in your computers. And when the evidence came back positive, and now we've had many forensics exams and independent exams that confirmed it and identified the IP addresses and so on, I thought, okay, naively, they'll apologize in the Department of Justice government and, fire whoever did it. I didn't realize they would spend taxpayer money going on 10 years now to fight me in court, to do anything other than let this go to court where there can be redress, to do anything other than give the documents that will prove who ordered the operation. I've come to understand that'll never happen, although I've won a small victory, a clerk's default against one ex-agent that confessed being involved in conjunction with an ex-Secret Service agent also on the team who was in prison for other charges when we got his name and he was identified to us, other corruption. The clerk's default I won against this ex-agent. Well, we should have a damages trial soon. Not that he has money or that I would ever see money, but it's the point of trying to hold someone accountable. He would have been able to theoretically testify about the higher ups who he had said in previous conversations ordered this and was doing it to other journalists and other citizens. But he has now disappeared/died.
Hmm.
So, that's kind of where it's going to end. I guess I will have a damages trial that won't go anywhere. I can't get to the higher ups because the courts require you to have all the proof about the higher ups before you can get discovery to get the documents about who ordered it. Like it's this weird circle. You have
Wait,
to
what?
have,
So wait, okay, you have to have the proof before you can do discovery, which is the process of uncovering all the connections on the basis of reasonable or probable cause or something to that.
that's right. My attorney said this is one of the little known conundrums of courts today. It's been turned into sort of this joke system where they can do that. They basically say what you have, I have no ability to force someone to give me depositions and evidence, but they're sort of like going to someone who's a family of a murder victim and telling them, gather all the evidence before we can charge the person that we think that you have some evidence did it. You have to get the fingerprints. You have to get the interview with him. And he's just going to say no. And how do you get the fingerprints if you have no right to go in the building? So they want you to have stuff before you can get the documents that would prove the stuff that would get you to trial. So I've kind of given up hope that we're going to get the names. I know some of the names because I have good sources, but I can't prove those names. I don't have anything on paper that proves these people did it. I just have the names of these lower level agents that took part in the operation.
For people who aren't familiar with, or maybe we're too young to be paying attention to such things, real quickly, what was Fast and the Furious, and what was your role in reporting on that?
Like many stories, I hear about something from a whistleblower or a source, and I think that can't be true. There's no way that's true. And then often it turns out to be true. And in this case, I got a tip about the government literally under the Obama administration, although a bit was done even under the Bush administration prior to them. See, this government establishment runs regardless of who's president, by the way.
Yeah.
But I got a tip that the government was intentionally allowing guns to be sold and putting them in the hands, thousands of them, of Mexico's drug cartels. And it just seemed so outlandish until I got sources who were currently doing it for the government, including one who went on camera because the government denied it. Oh, what fantasy. Ha ha. What is Sharyl talking about? And he went on camera, sitting federal agent, and looked in the camera and said, I've been doing it every day since I've worked here. You tell me I haven't been doing it. He had videos, he had evidence. It broke this global story. And the government was really mad at me because the goal is to, stop the reporter, not stop the problem. So they initially denied it, ultimately admitted it, ultimately apologized, but that was over a long, probably year process under which Eric Holder and the Department of Justice gave false testimony, gave false information to Congress. He was held in contempt for not turning over documents. I think the first time an attorney general was held in contempt of Congress. And when the documents were finally leaving the White House, which initially said it knew nothing about it, they went from saying it was a little local operation, nobody knew. We kept tracing it through documents all the way up to the White House discussing it. And then President Obama, for the first and only time of his presidency, declared executive privilege to keep the documents secret. So we'll never fully know all of the thinking behind what they were doing with putting these weapons in the hands of Mexican drug cartels.
All right, real quick. This clip is actually part of an exclusive interview that you can only see over at dadssavesamerica.com. That's our new Substack. So if you want to see more, head over and subscribe. And now, back to the clip. How has your philosophy changed over time? I mean, broadly, it could be a political philosophy, or it could be like a way you see the world. Can you speak to that? Can you speak, because you have gone on a serious journey from, career wise, and you have taken slings and arrows from the heights of power right up to the president functionally. How has that changed the way you look at the world?
I'm pretty skeptical, but I think in a reasonable way. I'm a very optimistic person, so I don't walk around angry and threatened. But I feel smart. Like sometimes it's almost like every time I hear something and I sense something's wrong or there might be an agenda, and I do a little digging and I find it, I'm like, I knew it. So I kind of like that. It's kind of a fun thing. What's more important about my job now than it used to be is unearthing information that the censorship complex doesn't want you to have. I think it used to be, I just like to inform people and explain complicated things and put information out there. I think it's never been more important to find that information that matters that other people aren't going to tell you about. I mean, I'm really worried about the fact that people are talking about censorship and the media is defending it. I mean, 10 years ago, let's see, until about 2015, nobody was talking like that. And the fact that the media's bought into it, there are people that want to restrict the free press and your free speech and change the thing that this country is supposed to be about. It's not for anybody's good. And once we cross over a certain line, like if Elon Musk hadn't bought Twitter and loosened that up again a bit, we're very close to being in a precarious situation where all of our information is like North Korea, where I imagine in North Korea, as bad as things are, if they have TV and you were to watch the nightly news, if they had nightly news, they'd all be told how wonderful it is in their country every day. And everyone I picture would be like living in squalor, knowing better, but with the utter inability to do anything about it. And I really don't think we're all that far from that. And there's an epic battle going on around the world between people like me and people that want to rise up against this, and the establishment politicians in all parties who want really not to have people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or Donald Trump, or frankly, even Bernie Sanders, in a position outside of the establishment, listening to people and bringing forth what the people want versus what this establishment has built itself into. I'm very concerned.
What do you think is at the root of today's journalists becoming advocates for less information for the public? And that seems to, I mean, one recent example is there are people who call themselves journalists who were celebrating that Kamala Harris was not doing interviews with the media.
That's right.
So I don't know if you're just a party hack, but there does seem like there's almost a philosophical change. Where do you place the root of this like censorious media? It seems against the interests of you as a profession to be censorious, but.
So this was a campaign that was launched in 2015. I believe I traced in my last book, The Smear, or the one before that, Slanted, where I was able to pinpoint efforts by well-funded billionaires behind the scenes working to form all of these journalism nonprofits and to fund all these fake fact-checking groups that didn't exist, all for the goal of getting us where we are today. I remember in 2016, not long before the election, President Obama gave a speech at Carnegie Mellon and talked about, this was foreign until this moment, that someone would need to develop some sort of curation system for news and information in this, what he called Wild West media environment. And I remember going, what? Curation of information? And I thought it was strange, but I knew that's an initiative. You don't just, a president just doesn't make that remark in an offhanded way. And then all the fake fact checking came up, the use of fake news, which was not invented by Donald Trump. I traced the origin of that phrase in its modern context to a nonprofit called First Draft, started at the start of the 2015 election cycle. And its whole goal was to talk about fake news. And I noticed initially it was always pinpointing Republican or pro-Trump news as being fake. And sometimes it was, but never the liberal news, which sometimes was fake. So I'm like, okay, there's some agenda here. Who's behind this nonprofit First Draft, who's a resource for all journalists? And journalists are such lemmings. They just go, oh, this is a great resource, First Draft. I should get all my fact checks from First Draft. There's a lot of organizations like it. They didn't have their tax forms filed yet, so I called and asked them where their money came from. Google. Google was owned by Alphabet, run by Eric Schmidt. Hillary Clinton's one of her top boosters at the time as she was running for president against Donald Trump. No accident that this organization started and began controversializing Donald Trump, calling for censorship and fact checking, or what I call fake fact checks, and accusing anyone who is not anti-Trump of being fake news. That's when it started. And Media Matters, this left-wing smear group, pro-pharma group, Media Matters, their internal documents where they're bragging about getting Facebook to start these fake fact checks and to start censoring data and information. So you can trace this effort really to the entry of Trump on the stage, but a lot was going on in that time period. And that's when things changed practically overnight. There was already some of this creeping into our landscape, but there was a big change starting around that time period.
Final question. I ask this of every guest. We call this show Dad Saves America because I believe that's a role we can play as men that is essential to the future of our country. It starts in the home and it expands out to the country. How do you think about your role in the American story?
What I would like people to say about me someday is that without fear or favor, she tried to put forth information for the public to be able to make up their own minds about important things. I don't think it's any more complicated than that. That's what I see as my role.